Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Josh and Jason Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Monday. If you don't know me, I'm a Christian rapper, devoted husband, father, and Army veteran. I'd like to introduce you to my co-host. He's a Christian, devoted husband and father, and football coach. What's going on, Jason? Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. How's it going? Alan, how are you? Josh, good morning. God bless you. And yeah, there it is. Getting ready for we got a playoff game today.
All right, man. We'll pray for the kids to be safe, man. So, all right. So, if you want out, this is going to be an amazing show for you guys. I was listening to Jaronism, and this gentleman was debating, doing an amazing job, and I just love what he was bringing to the table. So, Alan, can you please shout out your YouTube and if you have Instagram or anything like that, so people know where to find you?
Yeah, my YouTube channel is @space_audits, and pretty much all other social media websites are very similar. So you can find the link there. I have a Twitter or x.com, whatever it is, and it's the same URL. And I have a Telegram, same URL.
Perfect. Yeah, dude, definitely. So yeah, you were crushing it on there, man. And I was just loving what you were going over. So first off, I like you were going over before we started. Can you please go into your testimony and what brought you to first of all being a truther, and then also believing in the earth being flat?
Yeah, absolutely. So 9/11 had a huge impact on my life. It popped off at what I think I was in 7th or 8th grade at the time. They brought the TVs in. We all saw the horrible, footage and all that. And it just, from that, I was like, completely sold on like government narratives and, safety at all costs. You got to keep a close eye on those Muslims because they, they have AKs and they live in caves and they're going to take our freedom, all that kind of stuff. I was like, you got to be super, I was totally bought into it. And I came across this website that I used to go to when I was a kid. It was like a satire website. This guy would write these extreme satire articles, and he did this piece on 9/11, some conspiracy video called can't remember the name of it. It's the famous one that everyone always references from back in the day, the loose change or something like that. So he wrote this article on that, and I was like, wow, that's crazy that people think that 9/11 was a conspiracy. Like, how dare they? I had that whole mindset. I was like, that's so ridiculous. And then the loose change video popped up on my YouTube, and I was like, oh, you know what, I'm gonna watch this, or whatever. So I watched it, and it wasn't at all what the guy wrote about. It was completely different. And I was like, oh shit. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. I was like, oh snap. This isn't good. So that kind of freaked me out. So a much safer topic to look into was the moon landing. So like tangentially, I started looking into that at the same time, because when I was younger, somebody had put a bug in my ear about that there was a situation going on with that, and I was like, no way. And then like this whole new avenue opened up when I realized that you could question narratives and things weren't what they seemed, and coming to terms with that, it was like a whole process, because you don't know that that's even an option, right? You're like, it's like we're kind of used to it now. We're kind of desensitized to it. When we find out about a new op, we're like, oh yeah, of course, they're doing the thing again. It's nothing. It's a Monday, right? Does the day end in Y, right? So it ain't nothing to us anymore. But we kind of forget that there was a whole process to waking up where we were like what the heck is this? It was very frightening, and a lot of us went through it alone. So it was you were what's it called, like kind of ostracized or isolated, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we present stuff to people and we're like, guys, don't you see it yet? And they're like, no, of course not. like what do you mean? Because they haven't been through. They don't know that it's possible, right? So
there's like some layers. There's like some layers to this you have to go through. Like I said, like a lot of people start out with 9/11, and then it's like once you start finding out like levels, and like it's almost like a pyramid you go through, and then once you go through it and you start digging, that's very true, man. It does take a little bit. You can't just slap someone in the face with like flat Earth right away. You know what I mean? Like you got to hit them with just levels like 9/11. Basically Illuminati, black nobility running the and all this, the whatever, the Vatican, all these different things you start digging into, and then people are just. It takes a lot of, like you said, man. It takes a lot before they can actually. I think before they can accept the flat Earth, because they haven't done any. If they haven't done any research at all, It's very tough to just hit him with that. But yeah, go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
Well, 9/11 kind of backfired on them too, because it woke a lot of people up. They started seeing like, hey, maybe this is more to this type of stuff. Maybe it's not. Maybe Tower 7 didn't. Maybe
Yeah,
it didn't fall by itself. Yeah, maybe a plane. Maybe it was an explosion. Maybe it's just like people started digging out, and then you started meeting more people like that too. Because when I started digging deep into it, I started meeting a lot of other people that are like, "Hey, man, did you see this? Did you see that? Do you believe that?" I was like, "No, I don't believe anything in it like that," because I kind of started to stay away from it, because that stuff is like fear porn. It just makes you scared and
Yeah,
drives fear into the heart of people. So it's most of it is all lies. It's all about money and who benefits from what, and it's the hell. What is it? The Helligan dialect. The
Hegelian
Hegelian dialect.
Yeah.
It's like they're already 25 moves ahead, and we're still like,
yeah, we're just waking up
is
out of a
Osama bin
fog.
Laden?
Yeah.
We got Osama bin Laden? That's great. It's like, dude, he's not sitting he's not sitting in a cave. You pinpoint one race or a certain type of people or whatever. It's just like you start, and then you get like racially, profiled or whatever. You're like, hey man, like, is this guy a terrorist? You sit on a plane, you're like,
he's not even from. He's like from India or something. Like he's not even from Afghanistan or any of the places they supposedly. Yeah, it is terrible, man, and that must have been terrible for them. But yeah, keep going, Alan. This is definitely on track of what we've been through too, man.
Yeah, man. So as I started going through that process, I started looking at the moon landing, because before I got into flat Earth and all that, and like critiquing science and like really examining and everything and going back to what I thought I knew, I was I didn't have any room for spirituality. I replaced all that with globular science and all that stuff. So I was super into planets and all that. So I started looking into the moon landing, because that was always like I always thought space travel was like the coolest thing ever. I was just sure that they were gonna use a black hole to to gravitationally slingshot around and all this stuff. But so looking into the moon landing, I came to the conclusion that there was no way that was possible. So that was like a 2-year battle, because I really liked the moon landing, man. I really wanted space, and I gave it the benefit of the doubt. More than enough, right? It's like, how many times do I need to catch you cheating on me before we break it off or whatever, right? So I finally ended that relationship with the moon, and then right around that time, some flat Earth videos had popped up, and one of them was I saw Dave Weiss on like tinfoil hat, and he was doing this presentation, and he was like, "Okay, we'll put everything in three baskets. It works on a globe, it works on a flat Earth, or it works on both." And like nothing went in the globe, and I was I wasn't like dishonest about it, like, because that's the thing. It's like you can make things globally exclusive, but if you really think about it, okay, no, like not everything that you think originally is be mutually exclusive to a globe. So I was like, dang, he's making too much sense. This is a problem. I was like, is this going to be another thing I have to now look into? And like, that was kind of the journey. So I just kind of like started consuming content, and then so what I would do is I would watch flat Earth videos, and then I would watch the debunked videos, because at this time you could still kind of find a mix match between with the algorithm, so it wasn't super hard to find the flat Earth stuff really. And so I would just kind of compare and contrast, and then I was like, so after like a couple years of that, I was like pretty confident that it was definitely flat. I told a couple of my friends, and they were like, "Yeah, you're retarded." I was like, "Okay, well, that sucks."
Your friends are probably like in the same camp as you, as being probably super intelligent and smart, I would think, because you were telling me before that you were that was like your spirituality is just like digging into space and all that stuff. So were all those people like all totally sold on that and not like truthers whatsoever, or were some of them maybe a little bit truthers in there?
So a couple of my buddies are like aware of like certain things, but they're not willing to go down. They're not willing to go down that far. But like some of them are aware of 9/11 though. And like, and I'm like, bro, but like, just think about just that. Like, just just expand on that a little bit. But there's a lot that comes with it, because it's life changing, man. Once you realize the deception, like, you really can't, you're like, you have a completely different outlook on this place, and that you know that there's a purpose, like without, anyway, I'll get into that
Yeah.
towards the end there.
Go
But
ahead.
so let's see here. Where were we at? Moon landing, Dave Weiss, and yeah, so I had gathered up, my my big questions and my big, things that I thought were why we're definitely flat. So I found a YouTube channel. Shout out to my buddy I Can Science That. Who's he his thing is that he wants to bridge the gap between flat earthers and mainstream, science and education, because he thinks that flat earthers is just like an educational gap situation, which is, cool, because he's, a mainstream academic or whatever. He's a nice guy, total sweetheart. So is, not malicious or anything. But anyway, so I came across this channel. I was like, all right, I'm gonna hit this guy up and ask, do the flat, do the whole gambit and see
Is that gentleman a flat earther, or is that gentleman helping? He's just helping.
No. He's a mainstream globe proponent.
Okay.
Like,
okay.
There's
bro, and there's some nice people in that, and dude, it's like there's some really good people on that side too. I've listened, and dude, the best way to do it is the way you were saying, dude, is where you study both sides and you make sure that you get both avenues. And you don't just like dive into flat earth only and then like stick your head into that. You got to make sure you do check both sides, and I really respect you for doing that, for sure.
Yeah, dude, absolutely. And then so I would go on his he would do streams or like live streams of it. So he would be like, "Do you want to do a stream?" And so I would go on and we would talk flat earth, and I would ask him questions and stuff, and just like, because I wanted the best possible answer, because Joey YouTube is just some guy, right? Like I wanted the best possible academic level of explanation for these questions, right? Because and it was super lackluster. I was like, oh no. these are, like, it's definitely not good for the globe, like there's a lot of ambiguity there, to say the least, so I was like pretty, I was pretty sold at that point. I was like, if I can talk to a guy that knows all the material and this is the best answers that they can provide, I'm like, that's not good enough, because it was like, what's the evidence, not anyway.
Yeah. Well, dude, you listen. I mean, to be honest, bro, because what I do is I listen to debate after debate after debate, because and there is the best from both sides in these debates. It's not like flat earth comes in and then globe just smashes them. That's not what's happening, bro. It's like, dude, they're amazing debates. Like when you debated, for example, it was great. And I always hear Witsit go on and debate. And dude, he
like, crushes, dude.
Yeah,
it got so crazy watching Witsit crush everyone. I was like, dang. I was like, is there one? Can't there just be one guy that's good at the globe? Like, is there a globe Witsit? And it's like, the best globe Witsit is just a guy that just says, "Nuh-uh, I read a paper I quickly Googled a paper that says your paper is retarded." And it's like, okay, dude, cool. Like,
that's crazy, bro.
It's because it's hard for people to wrap their head around something that they've been taught for so long.
Yeah,
that it's like they're under a spell or something. And when you start to really research it, you're like, you know what? Wow, that's interesting, and it does sound right, because everyone looks at the flat earth like, oh, it's flat, like completely flat, and it just hovers in space like a pizza. It's like, no, there is no space. All the old maps back in the day, they're old maps. This is way before the globe started coming out. That's all an ice ring around the whole thing. Yep. And there's more land outside of this land, and even General Byrd, if you go, or Admiral Byrd, you listen, he's a decorated officer, and he's like, hey, dude, there's stuff out there that you guys don't even know about, and it's coming. Basically, don't think it's not true. There's nothing. It's like the most smartest people back then, way back then, all thought the earth was flat. Not you're gonna fall off the end. It's just there. It just keeps going on and on and on. And like Dave Weiss says, extraterrestrial doesn't mean outer space from another planet. It means extra land, which is extra territory. So, and this thing where you get from like the sun and the moon, like you get the sun shining off the moon and its reflections of it's like, no, dude, the moon, it's like it's in the firmament, and it goes around like this. I try to explain it to people like it is round, yes, but it's like a fishbowl more like it. It's not, yeah, it's a circle. And my buddy's like, well, in the Bible, it says it's a sphere, and a sphere is 3-dimensional. I said, look, there is no word for that. There was no word for that back in the day. They didn't have a word for sphere because nobody thought it was a sphere. So they just put it as a sphere. So
they only had a word for ball. Yeah.
Yeah. And it says like it's foundations. You don't build a foundation on a round. It has to be flat. Yeah. And it says in the Bible, I made this immovable and the foundations of everything. And if you think about it in people's dreams, like in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the tree that was so big, he could see to the ends of the earth, ends of it.
Daniel 4:1, yeah.
Ends of it. So that means there is an end of it, not just it's and he goes, I get in arguments too with my buddy, and he's like, well, what about if you flew around the equator, right? You should if you flew around the equator, you shouldn't hit any ice. I was like, dude, who the heck flew around the equator? You tell me one person, maybe Amelia Earhart that tried it, she's disappeared.
You're speaking of north to south, right? You're not speaking.
Well, I'm just saying, like that's what he said. So if he goes, if you flew around the equator, like they'd say that there is, you should be hitting ice. I said, yeah, any direction you go, you're gonna hit.
Well, if you hit the ice wall. Anyway, any direction you go south, you would hit if you go north to south, that's different than going like the equator. Because on a flat Earth, you could do the same thing.
I know, but he's saying
Alan could explain.
He's just saying it like that because he thinks there's still a globe, but and it's still. I said, no, dude. I said no one's gonna fly that far because first of all, the only person that tried to do that, she's gone. She disappeared in the Bermuda.
She never went north to south. That's the thing.
I'm not saying north to south. I'm saying that she's trying to say that she went around the equator. Which would be going around the world, but it's not like that.
Alan could probably talk about that. Yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yeah, so equatorial circumnavigation would improve a globe or a plane either way. Well, what would prove it if you could track the movement? So on a globe, they say if you have to go completely straight, and then on a flat Earth or on a disc or whatever, you would have to keep turning. So but the it's such a big circumference. I mean, I don't know how you would tell either way, honestly. So
also the flight plans, like people when they take flights, it's like weird if they have to take emergency landing, there's some spots like, why would you fly from this spot all the way over to here and then over to there? Doesn't make any sense if you're gonna leave LA and go to I don't know, Russia. You know what I'm saying? Like they take like 10 different spots. It's like, dude, there's no reason to go that way. Just if it's a globe, you just go fastest way to a spot is point like a straight line, not stopping off going somewhere else. It's like it's just weird. It's very weird. I think it's just more like perception. Like people think there's curvature. There is curvature. It's like, no, there's not curvature. It's just mountains, dude. It's just if he goes, well, how come I can't? If I took a telescope, people ask, well, if I took a telescope, if I should be able to see China, so I should be able to see China. I said, dude, your eyes won't be able to see that far, bro. I'm sorry, it's not.
Which friend are we talking about? Because I should probably definitely talk.
I got a lot of friends. No, I got a lot of friends. Dude. Oh, my boy Corey at work. He
okay, yeah,
he's pretty smart kid, dude. He's a smart guy, but he's into that. He's like, science doesn't say. I said, science, bro. Science is a theory and a hypothesis, and you got to prove it. I was like, have you ever seen pictures from space? He's like, yeah. I said, where? Show me a picture of the whole Earth, or what, like Josh said, show me a guy water skiing upside down in Australia, and I'll upside down, and I'll give you $1 million. I'll find a way I'll rob a bank and give it to you. I don't care, but you cannot prove that. Every picture that you see is always like just a horizon of basically of the Earth, or and they're like, oh, well, what about Jupiter? What about Mars? I was like, have you ever seen it? Have you ever seen Mars? He's like, well, they show a telescope. I go show me the telescope, bro. Go to the Vatican, put your eye in that Lucifer telescope, and all you're gonna see is a blurry little dot out there. That's it, a blurry dot. It's like, sucker, dude.
Well, that's the good thing about Alan is he could do, like, if you want to get into maybe Alan some stuff like that you've researched about, like like the science aspect, like has science ever proven like the 1,000 mile an hour rotation of the Earth, stuff like that. I think that'd be awesome if you can get into that.
Yeah. So let's see here.
That way we can deflect the people like the Corey talking about how science has proven this, science has proven that, which this is the type of stuff that I like you going over, dude, because people seem to think that everything's already been proven and it's already a wrapped up debate, but it's actually not, dude. You know,
It's already wrapped up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's
Dude.
what they think, bro.
Yeah. All right. So this here is a paper, or can you see that?
We could kind of see it. We can't
kinda.
read the paper, but we could see the screen though. Probably like, let me actually make it big screen. Yeah, it's close to being able to read, but go ahead though. We don't need to probably read the paper. You could just bring it
Yeah.
up and just let us know what
Yeah.
it says. It's all good.
Yeah. No worries. No worries. All right. So this is from Wilhelm Wien, and this is in 1898. And he's writing in this book, and he lists 10 experiments that were done, over the course of the last century in his time that were done to prove the motion of the Earth through the cosmos, right? To prove the Copernican principle correct. And it's 10 failed experiments, right? So of the list was what's it called? Aries failure, all that stuff. So like in modern times, we're told that Aries failure was a failure to detect the ether, and it was a positive proof of the globe. No, it was everyone knew that it was what it meant, that it was a failure to prove the motion of the Earth. So it was a null result in that regard. And it would falsify a stationary ether hypothesis, but it doesn't falsify a ether wind hypothesis. So when you get into these ancient texts, when you get into these older these old texts, these historical texts, they all look at it through the old ether theories are usually through the lens of a stationary ether, because they assume that the Earth is moving through it, so they just assume that it was stationary, right? So that's just kind of how they looked at it. So whenever they would try to explain certain phenomenons, their interpretation of it would fail in certain respects because they didn't have the mechanics to explain it, and also it wouldn't match up with the supposed motion of the Earth, whatever whatever their experiment was. So there was a lot of null results for the motion of the Earth. And then in 1887, Michelson-Morley came around, and this is on the list as well. And they did their optical experiment with a right angle interferometer, so just a light beam going like an L shape like this, just a split beam that goes perpendicular to one another, and then it comes back, recombines, and then it creates an interference pattern. So this was supposed to detect the velocity of Earth as it travels through the cosmos. So what they did is they axially aligned it to the 1 second here, I'll pull it up.
It's kind of blurry. Sorry, man. It's just kind of blurry. I can't really see it. Like your screen is blurry. I don't know. Is it blurry to you, Josh, or no?
Yeah, it's kind of blurry, but what we really need is the information part. So it's going to be hard for us to see his screen, like because he's got just the way he has it set up. But it's all good. We don't really need to read the information. He could just tell us where to look it up.
Yeah.
What I really want is that deep information that he's going over, just so Michelson-Morley, stuff like that, or Michelson-Morrison. Yeah.
Michelson-Morrison.
Sorry. Those type of experiments we haven't really gone over on our podcast yet. So
yeah, absolutely. So
yeah, I could see that definitely. I could definitely see that.
That's way better. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, so I was just going over the reference material for me to talk, and then I was going to pull up papers, but anyway, so it's you're good. So let's see here, Michelson-Morley. So they do their thing, right? They do their orbital velocity test. Now the thing with interferometry, it's producing interference patterns proportional to a velocity that it's detecting, right? So the way that they ration that out is a proportional ratio with the speed of light through the using Maxwell's equations for the speed of induction, or that's where they come up with like the speed of C, right? So when they proportion that out, it actually matches velocities. So the velocity that they measured, or we're expecting a fringe shift pattern to correspond to 30 kilometers a second, which is 66 miles an hour, right? So they were looking for their big heliocentric conformation, and the numbers that they got. So this is like the curve that they expected, this dotted line here for the fringe, or I mean, sorry, for the amount of fringes in between, and they got just over like one fringe. So that would be about like 5,000 to 6,000 kilometers a second. So their conclusion at the end of the paper is, if the Earth is orbiting, then it's orbiting really, really slow. So
which wouldn't make sense with the seasons, the times, or any of that stuff. So
no,
it has to be 66,600 miles an hour for it to make sense for it to be orbiting, right?
So under the paradigm that they were at, where they had assumed that the sun was 93 million miles, because the way it works, it's called scale invariance, because it's just based off of the sun's angular size, the sun and moon. Because they're the same size, they have to come up with a story about why the sun is super far. So they were committed to 93 million, and based off of that scale, they could have technically readjusted the distance and everything to proportionally fit 5 kilometers a second, but they couldn't do that. So like hypothetically they could have, but yeah, they didn't do it. So they were way off in that regard. So they didn't know really what to do with that. So this was in 1887, and they were just like, okay, we don't really know what to do. And there was a guy named Hendrik Lorentz who had a theory at the time. He was doing some experiments, and he had a mathematical framework to that was just like a kinematic theory, right? About like his proposal to explaining why there was a discrepancy in the pattern was length contraction. So he was the original length contractor. So when you get into relativity later on, a little bit later with Einstein and all that, you get length contraction and time dilation. Those are his big mechanisms for how light changes, how light changes and how time and distance change, basically to facilitate the change of light. So, but this was first proposed by Lorentz, and it was very ad hoc, like nobody was super happy with it. Everyone was like, okay, cool. Well, I guess we're length contracting now. And then, and then Einstein came around with his 1905 paper and proposed like length contraction, time dilation through all that, and just removed the mechanism of the ether and said that it wasn't needed. So basically and to put that in like the simplest terms possible, is if you think of like the old graphing, like XYZ coordinate system, a Cartesian coordinate system, he just added another axis to that coordinate system. So he just, so like XYZ, he just added another axis to the Y. So it's just perpendicular to the X axis. So and that's the time axis. So he just added time. So he just made a coordinate system to describe everything. And then he says you can contract the time and the distance. So the X and the Y, or I'm sorry, the X and the T, you can contract those to the speed of light. And then you can use the speed of light as a constant to measure everything out. Because the thing with kinematics is if you have two constants and a porosity, boy, you got yourself a scaling system that'll explain anything. So that's how Newtonian dynamics work, that's how Newtonian dynamics works with explaining orbits, right? So once they have the big G, right, from your boy Cavendish and his balls in his shed, once they got that constant, they can use that to kinematically express relationships in the sky. So they took that constant, applied it to the sun, they got the weight of the sun, right? And then once they have the weight of the sun, they can take each individual planet and their orbit around the sun. They could take that time and proportion it out. Let me pull up the 1 second. I'll pull up the equations that they use.
Okay.
To go with what I'm talking about.
So the big G, you're talking about gravity, right? So once they put that in, okay.
Yep. Yeah. So this equation here, so this mass here, okay. Yep. And then this little mass, the way that this equation works out is that the little mass cancels out. So the way that and 1 second.
It's okay.
And the way that works is they'll take the moon, they'll take the sun, for example, right? And they'll take Jupiter's orbital, the time it takes for it to orbit. And they can cancel that out and get the centripetal force that would be required to get that time, right? And that's backwards compatible. They just reverse engineer that to get the weight of Jupiter. So once they have, once they just, you know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be that. It will scale proportionally because that's kinematically how the system works. because it doesn't. It's just a measurement system. It's not a dynamic system for prediction. So once they have these individual weights, they can then look at Jupiter, and then they can see Jupiter's moon orbiting, right? They can take, there's something that orbits, that goes around it, right? Like what it is, how it works, who knows, right? But kinematically, you could take that orbital time. Once you have that and the weight of Jupiter, guess what? You could just reverse engineer the weight of Jupiter's moon, and then you just made a prediction based on the weight of Jupiter's, the weight of, like you go through this like mental process of uh like confirming the weight of all these planets and stuff. So it's like Jupiter weighs this much, and because it's gas, it must, therefore it must be this big. It's like you go through this whole rigmarole, but it's all based on mathematics that cancel out and don't matter and don't make any dynamic predictions. It's just a reverse engineer. So
yeah, you can know, like I do water math at work, and you can reverse the water math if you know what I mean. Like you could do that. So that's basically what they're doing with these with the planets, right? It's just like they're they're reverse engineering it mathematically and then trying to make it make sense, right?
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And then so once you have that, so they just further continued that because that wasn't good enough for them, because these people are they're perfectionists, man. They really want that perfect way to explain everything. And so anyway, they had to get a new framework introduced in. And Einstein's framework was the perfect framework to do it because, like I said, once you have a kinematic theory where you have that kind of freedom where you're just like, all right, boys, the mechanism is length contraction and time dilation. I'm doing a little wink here.
Yeah.
And it's like once you have the freedom to adjust the coordinate system to meet the constants, and you have the observation of the periodicity of the event, like you're good. You can explain anything. You can predict anything with that, and that's what they did.
So it was never proven.
That's how it works. Yeah.
It's not proven. It's still theory. That's basically what you're saying. And they're using mathematics to prove their theory, but it's not proven though.
No, absolutely. Because here's the thing, when you get into dynamic prediction, so there's a distinction between kinematics and dynamics. So kinematics are measurements, and then you can make predictions based off the measurements. You don't need mechanisms or forces or anything. You just need constants and the periodicity, the time of the event, right? And you could reverse engineer, figure out whatever you need to.
Yeah.
And with that system, that's cool. And then so what you would do is you would take the forces that you think are involved based on that kinematic information, and then you would start to make dynamic predictions where you would include the charge, like the actual mass, you would start to include the factors that would actually be meaningful, and then you would make predictions based off of that. And they don't do that. So that's like a dead giveaway right there. Like that's not the case. So when they get into orbital mechanics for the moon landing and all that kind of stuff and satellite launches, they don't do the relativistic stuff. They take a geocentric coordinate system and they do dynamic math. So they apply actual forces. So they use I forget what it's called, but all this they use Euler's force, some other centripetal the fictitious stuff that they wouldn't normally account for. They account for it because they need a mechanism for the flow, because this idea of we're going to ride a gravitational wave doesn't exist in a meaningful way that they could make predictions off of.
Yeah.
So they have to include it as a centripetal, pseudo force where, that it's acting on it. So there's the distinction right there. And it's like, why do they do that? It's like, well, because in real application, when things matter, when lives are on the line, when appearances are that this is a real thing, you're going with dynamics all the way. And then that's where it gets into, oh, well, tell me more about dynamics. Well, dynamics starts with a stationary like they call it the lab frame, which is a stationary non-rotating frame, and all of physics has to be backwards compatible, covariant with that frame. So when you start realizing that, they're like, oh, well, the Earth's turning and rotating, but it's not, it's an inertial frame, but sometimes it's not. It's like, well, hold on a second. What's all of physics based off of again? You said, tell me more about this lab frame. So for a fact that there's no meaningful rotation in any way that interferes with anything, because you're able to make dynamic predictions when you account for real forces based off of a stationary starting point. So we definitely know that the correct way to interpret things is from a stationary non-rotating point. and
that's in
yeah.
NASA documents as well, right? That's in their documents, is that they're doing stuff on a non-rotating Earth basically as well, right?
Yeah, well, that's in all manuals for flight manuals and stuff like that. That's in everything. Like
Yeah.
you just don't account for what's not real when things don't, when lives are on the line. You know, when it matters, you're not like, oh my god, how fast is the Earth rotating under me? Do I need to adjust the wheels of the plane?
Yeah.
Nah, man, you're coming in at an adjusted angle, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you already have it calculated out, your descent angle, and that's it. You know.
Yeah, and they're like,
So
well, what's happening is the plane is actually rotating with the Earth. You know, that's
yeah.
what they're trying.
Oh, dude.
So it's like,
Dude,
bro, how do you explain this, dude? Like with the plane going east when it's supposedly, you know, it's going 1,000 miles an hour, and the plane is, you know, couldn't the plane get to a destination faster going one way and then slower going the other way? But it's not even it's I don't know how they
how does a helicopter land on a perfect like a pad, like if it's going that fast? It's just I don't understand it.
Or how
Like,
can a helicopter can't just go up and then like for 24 hours and then, you know, just have the Earth go
exactly, there you go, exactly.
that would be a better, yeah, like that would be a good way to explain it.
Whoa,
And
that's a good, that just blew my freaking mind right now, dude. You're like,
well,
I never thought of it like that. How come like that?
yeah, go
So-
go
Just
ahead.
wait 24 hours and then go all the way around. That's funny, dude. Good
so
one,
they
dude.
tell us all that, right? And they're like, oh, conservation of momentum, or they'll say that it just goes in lockstep with it, right? But those same people will say that snipers account for the Earth rotating under it,
The Coriolis effect, yeah.
for sniper shots. And then obviously Jaron reached out to that guy who set that 4.4 mile record, and that guy was like, Coriolis who? Like, we don't account for that at all. Like, I didn't account for that at all. And then so check this out. If you were gonna do a 4.4 mile shot and Coriolis was a real factor, because like, you know, you were in the military, right? So like, you know
Yes.
about efficiency and how important it is to, you
Yeah.
know, you're min maxing, right? You got that
Dude,
mindset. Like,
I was in the Army, bro, and they never ever told me anything about Coriolis effect at all whatsoever. I never heard it once, and I'm not a sniper, so don't get me wrong, dude. I'm not shooting for, you know, 1,000 meters, but we do shoot different weapons. So when you do shoot the 50 cal, you are shooting 1,000-meter shot. Didn't hear about Coriolis effect, so I know our normal range we're doing 300 meters, which probably, you know, they probably don't need to. You know, you probably wouldn't need to account that much for those kind of shots, but we do 1,000 meters, which when we do with the 50 cal. So I didn't hear anything about Coriolis effect, not once when I was in the military, just to let you guys know, at all when I shot. It's not in the manual at all.
yeah, dude. So
It shouldn't be. Like you said, Alan,
yeah.
it shouldn't be in the manual anyways, because the bullet should be rotating with the Earth as the helicopter and the plane is supposedly doing, right? I mean, if it was a globe and it was doing what it's supposed to be doing, wouldn't the bullet do the same thing as the helicopter would do or the plane would do? You know what I mean? I don't understand why anybody would bring up Coriolis effect anyways.
You would think, but they already committed to the mythology.
Yep,
And they've
they're
already
committed,
made so
bro.
many they've already seen so many movies. Like, I remember that movie Sniper with Mark Wahlberg, and he was like, you know, and then we got to account for the Coriolis, and I was like, yeah, the old Coriolis, the old Earth rotating, don't forget that. And it's like, I'm like, yes, that makes perfect sense, Mark. You know.
Yep. Dude,
I hope you get the bad guy, you know. So yeah, when that guy's like, okay, you don't account for that, but so let's say that is a factor, though. Let's say that on a smaller scale than 4.4, you would have to account for it. So on the 4.4 scale, Miles, you're definitely going to have to account for it. So the best way to do that would be to align the direction, to be in alignment with the direction of the rotation, or opposite, so that the adjustment would be going with it rather than trying to
against it.
Yeah, rather than like shooting a target that's going to move into it that's not even in that direction. Why? You know,
yeah,
because that's insane. So
dude, you could shoot a child, bro, on accident, or you could shoot somebody that's like, you know, way
right,
off, dude, if you're trying to adjust for that. Yeah.
right. Like it's going to be thousands of miles in a different, like, because the flight time was like 24 seconds. So it's going to be in a completely opposite direction at that time, if that's true, right? So so he didn't account for that at all. And then so Jaron asked him, he followed up and was like, hey, which direction were you shooting, by the way? Because east-west would have been a good proof for the globe, or because at least you can pretend you're accounting for it, you know. He shot what was it? Southwest.
Wow.
Yeah, he shot. Yeah. So GG.
It should be.
Didn't a factor at all. And then for him to say like, yeah, it didn't account for it at all. He said that the equivalent of trying to account for it would be like a really fat guy riding a bike and then getting thin inner tubes to like, reduce the weight of the bike to get better speeds. And it's like, is it gonna matter? Like probably not, right? So
But they
I'm
act like
like,
it matters though.
but
And they
they all, dude, you could watch YouTube videos right now of a dude shooting like less than a mile, and he'll be like, "All right, boys, got to get that Coriolis in there." My dude took civilian shooting from like some guy that was in the military. He runs like a course, a whole fancy thing, and he's telling, and they're shooting like 300, 100 yards, stuff like that, and he's telling them about Coriolis and stuff, dog.
always say,
So
"Oh, really?"
yeah,
So that
because
they never.
I was talking to my buddy about it, because I was like, "Yo, bro," I was like, "What's the deal with this Coriolis thing?" Because he was telling me that he does, he was getting into shooting and stuff. I was like, "Tell me about your boy Coriolis," and he was like, "Okay, well, funny thing, the instructor says that we have these scopes that automatically adjust for it, and like and it's important to account for it." And I was like, "Oh shit, dude, that's what's up. You got
Well,
the
these
Coriolis
and
scope."
they're using scopes too, so you can hit 300 meters easy with the scope, man. That's no problem. It's different than when you're shooting with just with no scope at all, which we do in the armies. But anyways, dang. And my brother's wife is actually she does long range shooting and stuff. I'll have to ask him when he comes back on. I think he's looks like he's handling something, but man,
Oh yeah, that'd be
very,
dope.
yeah, very interesting. Uh Also, okay, so also we need to take into account that 66,000 miles an hour is like 30 times faster than a bullet. A bullet actually moves at 1,800 miles an hour, which is the fastest bullet moves at that. So we need to account for the fact that we think we're moving that fast, bro. Like people don't ever think of that. Like 30 times faster than a bullet. The moon is supposedly orbiting us faster than a bullet at 2,200 miles an hour, right? All these different things all together, and we're not feeling a thing. But Jason, your wife is a long range shooter, isn't she?
Yeah, she shoots for competition, not like Miles.
No.
She's not like Mark Wahlberg and Sniper. She's like a fuck to the Coriolis.
Well, the
Oh,
reason
You
why,
know,
the reason
no,
why,
she
the
does,
reason
but
why
she
it's
does shoot
important,
though.
the reason why it's important, you should probably ask her when you get a chance, dude, is because she's trained on a civilian side. So I'd be interested in seeing what they try to tell her about the Coriolis effect. You should ask her sometime.
I don't think I'll talk to my father-in-law. He'd probably he wouldn't believe any of this stuff when I try to talk to him about, because
Yeah.
one of my friends is all, hey, Jason believes in flat Earth, dude. What about what do you think of that? And my father-in-law was all, Jason, you're so crazy. And I said, well, prove it. Prove it. Well, I read this book and I've seen this stuff. I've seen this documentary. I read this book. I said, yeah, so have I. I was taught in school the same blah, blah, blah bull crap that you were too. But every 20 years, that stuff changes. And like, who knows what we're going to believe in 40, 50 years, because it only takes like one generation to start changing people's thoughts on it. And back in the like, say, like 1600s, like people around, they when someone started talking about, oh, it could be this, it could be that, they're like, you're crazy, because
Oh yeah. Well, if you look at even when Copernicus came out with that model, and from a Christian point of view, John Calvin, Martin Luther, they thought it was from the devil, dude, and it was crazy, So just like we would think when someone tries to, like some people think when people come out with the flat Earth, but yeah, dude,
because I go by the Bible, dude, and I read in the Bible, like the creation of everything, it doesn't mention planets, it doesn't mention any of that stuff. It doesn't mention it, only it mentions the stuff that it was made. And if you think about it, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, these are all gods that are up in the sky. They're all names of gods. So every time you look up and you give them your time and you keep saying their names, and you give them basically and you're actually putting them out there for everybody to be, they're recognizable to them. You're still worshiping the same gods, and who knows how this stuff got like put down on people to make them believe this stuff. Like maybe these mathematical terms, maybe it's like a spell they put over you. They say it so many times, they're like, people are like, oh, that's so astronomical to think of. I look at it this way. I've seen stuff like NASA tries to put like, oh, we sent a rover to Mars and stuff. It's like, dude, you guys can't even go to the moon anymore. Okay, so how are you sending stuff? The technology is lost right now because we can't. How come no one's ever been in the moon again? How come we don't see it every day and all the time? They should be celebrating. We should be already having a colony up there because that's what the movies will tell you.
I think the worst, bro. The worst that I saw was definitely India landing on the moon. I think, Alan. What do you think, bro? That was like the worst I've ever seen.
Yeah. They're like a third world country.
That was the worst, dude. Like Atari graphics I've ever seen in my life, bro. It was bad, dude. Even the guy had his flags, bro. Even the guy that's the prime minister, dude. I could see it in his face. Like, what are we doing, dude? With this flag?
He was like, thanks, Federal Reserve.
Who spent the money? Yeah, who spent the money on this one? Who directed this crap?
It was bad, bro. It was so bad that I had to show it to my Globe friends, and they were like, well, dude, that's not them actually landing on the moon. That's a projection of what it would look like. Like, who's filming that? I'm like, exactly who's filming that, bro? But dude, look how bad it is. Like, oh, it's not, that's not them landing on the moon. I'm like, that they're acting like it is. Look at it touched down and the whole building is going crazy. Like, we landed. They're like, dude, it was terrible, dude. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, look it up, dude. India landed on the moon just recently.
You should be able to see it because I could take a telescope and look and see every like little craters on the moon, all that stuff. So you should be able to see.
You know, what they did is what they're trying to do now, because we have such good telescopes, or is they're saying they're landing on the other side of the moon so nobody can ever see it. So because
how come we can never see the other side of the moon? If everything is always in rotation, like I look at this, like I said, I grow plants on my backyard, and every winter the sun changes its position. So it'll get in the summer, it'll get sun all through my backyard. But during the wintertime, it moves, and all the stuff that used to get sun is now in shade. And I'm like, that's if it's a rotating and it's in a fixed position, how is it moving like that? And it's actually getting in the wintertime. I think it's closer to us, or I think it is. The sun's closer to us. I don't know what they say.
Yeah, that's what Dave Weiss was saying. Like, I'd have to do the research myself, but
it's just crazy. I was like, if you see videos of the sun like going down like the horizon, you can see clouds behind it. It's like, how is that? Like, oh, it's perception. It's like, yes, it is perception. So you're telling me that God said what he did, and he says what he means and means what he says. And if you read the Bible, it really, in the beginning, it just tells you, here's the important stuff. This is what I did. And if there's other life on other planets, then Jesus died for, some green alien that comes down, some gray, big old eyed. It doesn't say he died for that. It basically says he died for our sins. So where does it mention, oh, these aliens come down and they star people, it's in that story's in every civilization from the beginning of time, that same story. So just like sounds like Genesis 6 to me, and they take it out of like, oh, it's just like their way of telling a story. It's like, no, man, they really believe that stuff. So why do they have the Nazca lines? Why do they have like the huge things like that? Where does that stuff? Why would they do that? Because you can't see that stuff from the ground, but you can see it from high up in the air. So if this is the case and aliens are real, then that would disprove God. Then, and that's what they try to do with every little situation of the globe, of evolution and anything. They just try to disprove that God exists. And the way that, if they could complete that, you have a big apostasy, and that's what's going on today. Like, this is why you got like this nation is this whole world is just like, in turmoil. Yeah, everybody sees it.
Yeah, they just take Genesis and they put it into a blender. But Alan, keep going, bro. With some more of the stuff that you have. We're coming up on an hour.
Yeah, you're good. Let's see here. So the kinematic coordinate system, once you have people convinced to adopt the philosophy that the speed of light is the same, so you got your necessary constant for your measuring stick, and then you can contract the rest of the coordinate system proportionally. You can then explain any observation or event or phenomenon within that within that framework because it has unlimited capability, right? So that was the whole thing with getting people to adopt it because when you read the paper, Einstein provides no citations for how he came up with any of this. He just the framework itself adheres to something called Lorentz symmetry. So it doesn't adhere to Einstein symmetry. It's literally Lorentz's framework that he just stole and then acted like he's like, oh, I never heard of Lorentz. He actually says stuff like that. Like, oh, I came up with this on my own. And it's like, buddy, it's Lorentz symmetry. Like, let's not play games anymore. Like we're grown adults now. You're gonna look me in the eye and tell me Einstein came up with something and then called it Lorentz symmetry, but then didn't cite the man. Okay. So it's like, just like little stuff like that, right? But this framework was so important to them because of that capability, right? And then in 1915, the general theory was expanded upon, and what that did was expanded the covariant relationship. So, like I was saying earlier, you got to be covariant with the lab frame. So all of physics, goes back to that stationary, non-rotating framework, right? So you got to be covariant with that. So they had to change. They were changing the laws of physics to be covariant with the Lorentz transformation. So like this they like call it the Lorentz transformation. It's the little y. It's a gamma symbol. So that's the contraction for time dilation and length contraction. So that's how they contract the coordinate system through that mechanism. And that people were starting to like see through that, right? So with the general theory, they expanded covariance through the principle of covariance to any coordinate system transformation. So then using gravitational effects, they could explain anything: rotation, acceleration, you name it. They could contract it and dilate it, and that was it. And so they took the concept of mass attracting mass, and they turned it into a mathematical field. So they just have these different vectors of like density potential, right? And that's all they did.
That's supposedly proving the mass. That's basically supposedly
they
proving the orbits because
yeah,
mass attracts mass, and they place it in a mathematical equation.
Yeah, they say that field now, they turn that mass attracting mass into a field that distorts space time around it. The x, y, and the coordinate, and the space time is the x, y, z, t coordinate system. So it distorts t and x when they talk about space time curvature, and like they want you fascinated with this. Like they'll often be like, here's a sheet of paper, and the fastest way to travel between A and B is to fold space time. Like there's no space time; it's a coordinate system. So it's just t and x are just contracting on a piece of paper. That's all it is. It's just mathematics. It's abstract mathematics that they want you to adopt as like an actual framework, as a real mechanism for things, and that just isn't the case.
And see, using all that math, like right now, I'm horrible at math. I can barely read a tape measure right now, dude. So when you say all that stuff, me being as someone that's on the fence of being believing or not, I'd be like, oh, the math sounds right. That sounds really right, man. Because you know what? I'm not going to try to figure that out. I'm not going to be like, well, the x coordinate meets with the y coordinate, and then it's like, dude, when you start putting letters into the numbers, bro, I'm done. Subtraction, addition, and multiplication, division. That's about as far as I get, dude. Business math is the highest I can do. Balancing my checkbook. That's all I can do. I can't go any algebra or
here's the thing.
Trigonometry.
They make it so if you were able to do the math would work, but taking that and putting it in the actual, like in a real life scenario doesn't work.
But you can't measure. How do you measure the Earth? If you're like, you're just becoming a scale size, like you don't have a tape measure and just measure the Earth all the way around, like, oh, this is how it's got to be. And like, if you look at a map, Russia's bigger than Africa, and Africa and Greenland's bigger than, like, it's like, dude, you look at it like, oh, that must be that must be right. It's like, dude, it's not right, because Africa is way bigger than Russia and Asia. It's like it's weird how it's easy to trick people when you just go, when some teachers ask school going, see this is the globe, see this, now listen and get your A's and your B's now and shut up, don't ask questions, and you just learn it, and we're going to indoctrinate you and make sure that you understand that this is what we want you to learn. And then it's like, okay, well, that must be true because I'm not a teacher and I don't want to, I'm trusting this person to teach me what's truth. And, they're still talking about how Columbus came over here and it was just a peaceful thing with the, and it's like, dude, your history is way messed up, bro. Yep. And it's like, oh, the Indians were savages. They didn't know it. No, dude, your history is all garbled up, bro. Like we're being taught some stuff that's not even right. And then it's easy to do that because people just want to ignorance is bliss. They just want to get through their day and then go home and play with their toys so they can, that's all it is.
Yeah.
It's okay, weird.
Go ahead, Alan.
Absolutely. So to kind of try and break down the math to just to visually represent it for you, because like a lot of people have this struggle, and I had the same thing too. My experience with math is very limited too. I check out at algebra as well. So that's my experience with it. So to kind of just show you what they're talking about, right? So a coordinate system, right, is just XYZ, like a graph. Like, so if you're just plotting something out, so if you want to know the, like, say the distance between something right here at this point at -1 or at 1 1, and then at 4 4, and then you could go like, okay, there's 3 tiles of there's 3 tiles between here, like, or that kind of thing. So you can draw a relationship between things. So it's just, that's all they did. They just took that concept, that coordinate system, and they just added another axis to it. So typically you'll see a Cartesian coordinate system as X, Y, Z. One second. So it gives it gives 3 dimensions here. So you have depth, height, and length, right? So all they did here is they just have X, which they say is the direction of motion. So when they talk about a velocity or something moving or a vector, it's going in the X direction. And when they talk about time, they just added an axis perpendicular to that X axis, meaning, so you see how that Y axis is right there?
Mm-hmm.
Just imagine that there's also a T there. That's
the time.
That's the same position, right?
Okay.
So that's all they did. And then Minkowski's contribution to space-time, which I think is a really nice way to represent it, is these is you take that X, Y, Z, T coordinate system, right? So you take your X here and you got your time here, and then you have these lines that are a hyperbola contraction, right? So what this is representing is the faster you move in a direction X, the more time and space contract. So this is a proportional amount of contraction. So as long as an event doesn't violate causality, meaning like it's not like a grandfather paradox, or as long as it takes place within the coordinate system and it doesn't exceed the speed of light and it's not slower than the speed of light, you will get a successful transformation. So to just kind of represent that, just the faster something's moving, the more it experiences contraction and time dilation. They just express that through the coordinate system. if that helps you visualize it and break it down.
It does, yeah. My brother took off because he has a football game, but I'm into this, bro. It's all right. It helped me.
Yeah.
It helps me, bro. And it should help
worries.
my audience. And if you guys are listening on audio, you guys can go to YouTube, Josh Monday Music and Podcast, and you can check this out visually so you can kind of see it. It helps out, definitely.
But yeah, absolutely. And I'll send you an email to some references that people can watch for some videos that break down like the when you see it visually, because there's some really excellent videos that help you see the abstract mathematics for what it is, and you're like, oh, that's what they're doing. Because like this light cone thing made no sense to me, and then I saw a video on it, and I was like, oh, that's actually brilliant. Like how they now that I know what it is, I'm like, oh, okay. The faster you move, the more it contracts, and okay, got it. Like that's it.
Yeah,
it looks very confusing and intimidating, but it's like it's pretty straightforward once you get a handle on it. Because and I think part of the mystique about the whole thing is like they want it to be overcomplicated. They want the barrier to entry to be so that you have to defer to somebody else to get the explanation, because no one's going to tell you that, hey, you can just cancel out that mass and reverse engineer the porosity and get the whatever force that would be required, and that would also be equivalent to the mass, which isn't required at all, and then you could just say that you did it. No one's going to explain that does the math, because they've most people don't see it that way, or they have like an attachment to it and they think it's like physically meaningful. So they're not going to analyze. So they're not going to analyze it that way.
They taught you this at a certain point of your life where you're not going to question it, and then you're just going to accept it. And then when you go to college, you've already accepted that fact. So now they could just indoctrinate you with more stuff, and you're gonna believe everything stacked on top of that. So by the time you do, like I would say, read the Bible or do certain things, then like when you talk about flat Earth, you've had so much stuff stacked on top of it that it's hard to break through that barrier, of block walls that have been built, so it's tough. So all right, so let me ask you this, bro. So you've done the research on that. So do you believe in like the Big Bang Theory or evolution? Have you gone down those two rabbit holes yet?
Oh yeah, dude. There's no the Big Bang's ridiculous, dude. Okay. There's none of that. There's actually, what's funny about the Big Bang is I didn't know this until recently when I was looking into some redshift stuff. There's when people say the Big Bang Theory, there's actually like 7 different Big Bang models that are used to explain different events. Most people just think that there's one Big Bang, but there's actually different iterations of it because it's so ridiculous that it requires different interpretations depending on who you need to convince and their level of education, because they're not going to accept certain levels of nonsense to it. Like, so there has to be different stipulations. So they literally change, they have different interpretations of it. So it's like, that's not viable at all. No. The Big Bang was a bummer because I used to be super into black holes, and like singularities was a whole thing with those. And that's like where the Big Bang, would have came from or whatever. Right. So realizing that was not real was a bummer, man, because black holes were cool. But and then what was the other question? Evolution. Yeah, dude. So evolution was super easy to give up because I always thought that was kind of retarded. And and actually I don't know if you got a chance to catch it, but Bennett was on, this guy Robert Bennett was on Wit's in the Field thing, and he did a section on evolution, and it's really funny. So they used to say that there's this junk DNA and all this stuff. Well, it turns out the junk DNA is metacode to tell the DNA how to adapt to certain situations when it needs to. So there's no such thing as like junk DNA. They just told us that for years, and then like now they're retroactively like, it's actually metacode and there's a purpose for it, and we're we just lied, but we're also still telling you the truth. And then there was a really funny rhetoric for evolution I thought was hilarious because based on
junk DNA would be like human to chimp. Is that what you're talking about? Where there's like where they, if you actually lay it out, I don't know if this is what it is. I didn't get to see the thing, but I know if they actually lay out like chimp DNA to actual human DNA, they're only going off of the ones that match, but there is a lot that does that's the same, right? I heard or something, or I don't know. Maybe
there's something to that as well. I'm not super familiar with the whole thing. But what was really funny was I think it was the what was it, the chromosomes that they share or whatever, and like the fern has the most, it's like 216. So according to evolution, the fern should be the most advanced sophisticated organism, and like it should be running everything, because it's way more advanced than we are. And like the chimp's still advanced, so like according to evolution, like they evolved from us, not we evolved from them, because they actually have 48. So they're a little higher than us. So it's just, it's, like it's so backwards when you think about it. And then you get into, like the idea of like, oh yeah, you're just developing the mechanisms to digest food, which you don't already have a mechanism for and don't require, but you're somehow sexually selecting to develop a mechanism to solve a problem you don't yet have. It's like, okay, man, like let's just tap out of this. So yeah, that was a real easy one to get out of because that's retarded. I mean, you can just, there's no.
So you're definitely on the same page on that. So now, I mean, this is a Christian podcast, so I know I did ask you the question. You said you're not Christian. Now, at this point, you do believe in a creator, though? Is that where you're at, or where you're at with that?
Yeah, so coming to the realization, like I said, starting off, from the atheist aspect, and being super into science and all that, and then like not have, like, this place has no purpose, we're an accident, we're a small speck of dust in the cosmos, we're in the Goldilocks zone, thank God who doesn't exist, thank the sun, I guess. It's like that was like my mindset, right? That we just happened to exist here, and like, I was super depressed and bummed out about all that, and then coming to this realization that this place has a purpose, that we're the center of creation. It's undeniable, right? So it's like you can't really accept that and then be like, well, it's still just happenstance, like, obviously there's intention here. So like, as far as like what the creator is, what the name for it is, how it works, and how all that is, I have no idea, but I know for a fact that everyone here is here for a purpose. We're all going through something. We're all here to experience spiritual growth in some way. I look at this place as like some sort of battleground. Like, we go here to go through things to help, spiritual growth in another, in the other dimension that we go to when we die. Whatever that phase is of existence. And in there, I don't know, we reflect on what we did down here. Like, I don't know. Then we our friends, the people that we have connections with. Because I think when we come down here, we have the people that are in our immediate lives, because everyone else is basically NPCs relative to the people that we know in our lives, right? So like, we're all in like small bubbles in our own, but like, not that people are NPCs, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah, you only know like these people that
you know the people that you're supposed to know while you're here. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? Like, you're not
I get
supposed to
it.
know Johnny Depp, or like, of him, but you don't, you know what I mean? Like, that's not part of your journey here. So like, the people in your vicinity or what, so you're supposed to be here for those people and those interactions, and that you're supposed to deal with that stuff. And yeah, like that's the way I think it works. So when you die, you go up or whatever, and you reflect back on that kind of stuff. And if those people need to come back and do their spiritual growth things, like, you might come back and help them, or like,
Okay.
like, and that's where you get into like the guardian angel kind of aspect, because there's always the stories of like people feel like the family members watching over them and stuff like that. And I've had personal experiences like that. My mom has, my sister especially. Um, so it's like, it's undeniable to me that that pe- that the resonant form of people that you knew when you were here come back to like look over you in a way, in such a way that their resonant energy, you is familiar to you, and you recognize them as like, oh, this is grandpa, so, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're close, man. You're close. So and I'm not saying I'm not gonna try to Bible thump you or anything like that, but there, if you I like the fact that when I dig into the word of God, it does line up with uh the earth being flat and that kind of stuff. It didn't make me a Christian by the flat earth, but it does actually bring some people to the Bible and to God, and open to that. But I think that you're on a good journey, bro. I think you're doing amazing things out there with debunking science, which I think science is something that's massively pushing people away from becoming Christian. So I think it's awesome. I think you're doing a great job out there, bro. Definitely keep going, and I pray, that you do accept Jesus at some time. I know that you're on a journey, and at some point I think you'll get there. But
Yeah, thank
but
you, I
anyways,
appreciate
yeah,
that.
yeah, you're doing good though, bro, man. I love what you're doing out there. And if you could, I think this is a pretty good ending to the show. What about, let me ask you real quick, the firmament, do you believe in the firmament being solid, or do you just believe it being an ether? What do you believe about the firmament before we get off?
Yeah, so I kind of went back and forth on the solidity of it, and or it could be like a different, like a, so as the temperature differential changes up there, as it goes up, like a different modality of the ether would have would take place. So there's different, so it wouldn't necessarily be a physical container in the sense that it's, a physical container, but it's a pressure differential from a mechanism that has a different form at a certain altitude. So in a sense, yeah. So like, like who knows, right? Because it's like, is the structure, because you got to think too. I don't even think that it's that high, right? Because a lot of people think that the dome, like, you have this image of like a dome, like, like a real
Mhm.
pronounced dome. I think it might be like a slight curve, like over a long, this, like,
Distance.
like it's
Yeah.
it's hard to say because we don't know the actual dimensions of this place.
Yeah.
And it's like, is like, we know it's bigger, right? But it's like, how much bigger? And it's
Yeah.
like, is there, and then people get into like, is it infinite? Does it go on forever? Is there another sun? It's like, I don't know about
Yeah.
all that, but I know at least within this dimensions of this place, it's way bigger.
Yeah.
And it's like hard to say like the dimensions of what a firmament would look like and all that. So yeah, like I'm open to it, you know, like obviously, but like how it works is the mechanism and all that. Like I think there's room for different ways to look at it, I think,
Yeah.
especially
So
with plasma and stuff. You could get into different things like superfluids and stuff like that, like different density layers, because it can't be that it's an expanding nothing, right? Like that's obviously off the table. So
yeah.
it has to transition into a different medium or a container at some point, and it's like at what elevation does that happen, and by what mechanism is like what's in question.
Yes, definitely. Well, dude, I think this is an amazing show, bro. I appreciate you coming on, and I thank you. I think you did a great job on breaking some of this stuff down from a intelligent perspective. And like I said, man, I like what you're doing, bro. So keep it up. And shout out your YouTube, shout out your Twitter and everything, or anything that you would like anybody to follow before we get off, and definitely do that. And I appreciate you coming on, but go ahead and shout that out, and I'll end it in prayer.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, space_audits is my YouTube channel. You can check it out there. I do that's where all the work's at. Lately I've been focusing on ether, because it seems that that's what they've hidden, right? That there's a interconnected mechanism for everything, and then like looking into the philosophical implications of that, it's like it turns out all of the ancient civilizations that were also flat earthers also believed that that everything was interconnected, you know, to the cosmos, like you know, working, like, you know how they tell us like, oh, there's little bits of stardust in us, and it's like, well, that's retarded, but there is an interconnectedness, you know, and that's what they're measuring with the light and all that. So it's like that's what they've taken from us. They've taken that connection that we have, that everyone knew about inherently, and I think that's super important to bring back. So I'm think like, you know, I'm been looking into that, so you can follow the progression of research on that as I'm going over the historicity of it, man.
Yes, and also if you're a Christian, I mean, it's good to, if you listen to Alan on certain things, because it'll prove that the earth is fixed and immovable. It'll also prove certain things that the Bible is actually speaking about. So I love that, man. And also, as we know, the Big Bang theory is out the window, evolution theory is out the window. You know that there's a creator. So, you know, once you start getting into the Bible and digging into that, it's easier to accept that, instead of having this big block wall being built between you and the Bible, you know. So but thank you, bro, for everything you do, man. I really appreciate what you're doing, and I'm gonna pray for you too, man. When I get off the air, you know, that you know, start getting into the Bible a little bit, finding out that it is actually proving exactly what you're researching. And you know, and it's even as it is, as the document as old as it is, it actually it never changes. But you know, science changes like underwear. So we'll go ahead and
Yeah.
end this in prayer, man. So Father God, in the name of Jesus, we appreciate everything you do. I just want to pray for Alan, you know, that you put a legion of angels around him. He's is exposing science and exposing some of the evil that people are trying to portray to the public. You know, just pray that you protect him. I just want to pray for anybody that's listening that needs prayer right now. Any chains that need to be broken, you know, spiritually. We know that this is a spiritual battle. And you know, Alan was talking about angels, you know, like I said, just please have some angels protecting him and his family. And you know, he's exposing some stuff that the government doesn't like, that science doesn't like, and you know how they are, Lord. So thank you very much for everything you do for us, and we love your word and we appreciate your word, Lord. And thank you for everything you do. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, Alan, thank you, brother. And you have a blessed day today. You know, we appreciate everything you do. Everybody that's listening, please subscribe to the YouTube, subscribe to Alan's YouTube as well. And also, if you could leave a 5-star review, and also leave a 5-star review on Spotify, we appreciate it. And also subscribe to his YouTube, and if he has anything audio, please give him a 5-star review as well. Thank you guys, and God bless you.